We're talking about possibly the best movie and trailer of the past. Actually, since in film's inception, we are talking about
the most important movies ever made.
Yes, The Hobbit, because those are excellent movies. Maybe we should start off by saying that you and I are big Lord of the Rings fans.
Huge.
Right?
That's what got me into movies, and like I had an obsession with Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I've got like 9 inches devoted. No, more than that. I've got like a foot of DVD Blu-ray space devoted to the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And anyway, so then The Hobbit came out, and we both went to the opening midnight screening of the very first Hobbit movie. And I was quite disappointed.
Yeah.
Quite disappointed.
Yeah, like I think it might even have started before that too. Like I remember it was probably like a solid 8 months to a year before that first Hobbit movie came out. They released that teaser trailer for it.
My dear Frodo, you asked me once if I had told you everything there was to know about my adventures. Well, I can honestly say I have told you the truth. I may not have told you all of it.
Bilbo Baggins. I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
But thing to remember too, when we first seen that teaser trailer, this is when it was still 2 movies, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's a whole can of worms.
So that's
Maybe we should
thing.
save that for after we talk about each movie.
Yeah, or kind of work it in throughout.
Yeah. Well, let's just talk about the first movie, this masterpiece.
Start with Unexpected Journey.
This movie that Peter Jackson has been dying to make his whole life.
The first time I ever mentioned or asked Pete if The Hobbit was ever something that he would consider, we were on location, on Rings, somewhere in a forest, and we had a bit of downtime, and I just kind of, would you ever think about the potential making The Hobbit after this is all said and done, now that you've spent so much time establishing the world of Middle-earth? And he was quick to answer with, no, not interested in that.
So the concept was that we would produce it, and Fran and Philippa and I would be involved in the script as writers, possibly with somebody else, and that we'd have another director come on board. Guillermo del Toro was one of our favourite filmmakers, and he was very enthusiastic about doing it. Then MGM got into some financial problems. That got to the state that, each of our proposed start dates with Guillermo got pushed, delayed. And so it became a question of whether Guillermo waited for the next 6-month delay, or does he move on and jump back on board one of the other projects he was developing. And that's ultimately what happened around May and June in 2010.
Peter didn't immediately, pick up the reins either. I think a lot of people think that as soon as Guillermo left, Peter was in. That was not the case. I think Peter kind of struggled with it.
Oh, the guy really didn't. He had no urge to make this movie.
Exactly.
At all. He basically blew his wad on the Lord of the Rings trilogy and was like, I don't feel like directing the Hobbit movies.
No.
But he was kind of cornered and didn't have a choice.
No, and Lord of the Rings, the last one came out in 2003. It's like 10 years between the movies being released, first Hobbit and the last Lord of the Rings. Like, that's not very long at all, This isn't like Ridley Scott, where he went from doing The Alien and then waited like 30 or 40 years later to do Prometheus.
Yeah.
Not saying that that's like a great movie or anything, but you can see why someone might want to return to that world after 40 years, but after putting years of your life into it, and 10 years later to go back.
If you think about it, he probably didn't even have a full 10 years off, because they probably started writing The Hobbit in like 2007 or something like that, right? What did you like about this movie? The first one.
What did I like? Okay, so I remember my first impressions are basically what stood with me till now. Is I remember really liking Martin Freeman. I think he does a really good job. He looks like kind of like a Hobbit in real life a little bit. He's just like the perfect person to play Bilbo. And his acting's really solid throughout, and he has a certain like heart to him, Martin Freeman, that you see not only in that Bilbo character, but in like every role in Sherlock. That he always has like a heart to him, And that's perfect for a Hobbit and stuff. And I thought he did a really good job in the movie. I thought some of the stuff with the dwarves interacting with each other was okay. You know, again, I'm not expecting the dark kind of atmosphere of Lord of the Rings throughout. And I liked some scenes, for example, the flashback scene. I think it's really cool. The flashback scene with Thorin cutting off Azog's hand.
The Battle of Ananz's
Yeah.
The trees like torches blazed with light.
I cannot guarantee his safety,
Understood.
nor will I be responsible for his fate.
But honestly, I think that's kind of where it stops. And I like seeing Ian McKellen return to play Gandalf the
Yeah.
Grey. Not Gandalf the White, Gandalf the Grey, the more
Yeah.
like stoned, like wise Gandalf, you know? Because it's true, like,
He had
in
it was
Lord of the
a
Rings-
different character. He's a little rougher around the
Yeah.
edges of Gandalf the Grey.
in Lord of the Rings, like, we only got that character for a movie.
Yeah.
But when I think of Gandalf, I think of Gandalf the Grey. So it's kind of cool seeing him again
Yeah.
as a fan. But that's honestly, I think, where it stops. And I can go into things I don't like, but what did you like about the movie?
Again, Martin Freeman's role his performance, because he's quickly become one of my favorite actors in the past year.
Absolutely, yeah. Great.
Some of the action sequences were cool, like the Battle of Anzur.
Yeah.
I did like Goblin Town. I'm like one of the only person who really enjoyed Goblin
Yeah.
Town. I didn't enjoy the Great Goblin. That was the only thing in Goblin
Mm-hmm.
Town I didn't like. I'm really struggling to think of things that I really liked out of that movie. Okay, it was a well done movie, right? You
It was like somewhat
you didn't
well
feel
made.
you didn't feel dumb. You didn't feel it wasn't pandering that much.
I don't think it had anything to pander about.
Yeah. Most of the acting was really good. It just felt like it was.
Yeah, like all across the board, the acting in the first Hobbit movie is pretty solid. Should we start with maybe the things we weren't so hot on?
Go ahead.
Okay, well, I think one thing too, it's not my ultimate concern with it, but I remember the last time I watched it, I kind of realized how small of a movie it is. You didn't really think that there was stuff going on outside of what the characters were doing.
It's because there was.
Yeah.
Well,
that's
they try to start the whole Dol Guldur thing,
Yeah.
but it doesn't go anywhere. In this
Yeah.
movie.
That's just kind of more of a minor gripe. But I think it's pretty safe to start off with like one of the first scenes in the movie, if not the first, is Bilbo writing the story of the Hobbit, and him and Frodo is kicking around in it too, right? And there's so much, not only in the first movie, but the second movie, where it's like these little nods and winks and callbacks to Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like the movie relies too much on what we know and love about Lord of the Rings, and almost as its own like great standalone movie with great characters and moments and stuff. Because all the moments are almost like callbacks, wink, wink to Lord of the Rings.
When I was watching the movie the first time, and now that anytime I've rewatched it, it feels like a regurgitation of one of the first Lord of the Rings films.
Yeah.
In that you were expecting to see big, wide, little group of people trailing across the landscape,
Yeah.
because we saw those in the first Lord of the Rings movies, but nothing was fresh about it at all. The story really meandered and really got away from Bilbo quite a bit, even though it's a movie called The Hobbit.
Yeah.
And fuck, it was just kind of boring at times. I was like, why? Let's move the plot faster,
It's hard,
please.
like, it kind of connects what we're seeing with Martin Freeman. He's great as Bilbo, and we can latch on to Bilbo. We care about what he's doing and stuff. We're following him, rooting for him. But it's kind of like in Lord of the Rings, so you have like the Frodo and then almost like the Strider / Aragorn character. You know, like, and you latch on to both of them. You love both of them. And as decent as the acting is for the character of Thorin, there's really not much for us as viewers to grab onto, because he's either whining the whole time or berating Bilbo. Not like anything harsh, but
He's supposed to be like this fantastic leader that all the dwarves
like
can
look up to and would die for. But we don't really
don't get
ever
that.
get that in that first
No.
movie whatsoever. If anything, he's the guy you're kind of like, fuck that guy.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Like, why would I want to follow him?
I just the one moment where you're supposed to be like, go Thorin, is when like Balin tells Bilbo the story of how
Yeah.
he defeated Azog.
Yeah.
But then that's kind of like what's the term I'm looking for? Emasculating to Thorn, because then you find out that he didn't actually kill Azog.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, and that's not only a problem with really Thorn, but even the side characters. Like, there's so many of them, and I think 98% of the people watching this movie aren't even able to name all of them. Like, I can't name all of them. I can't even tell the difference between some of them half the time.
Bombor doesn't even get a line. And then all the other dwarves are just like there for comic relief. There's no like, there needs to be like, and Dwalin's there as the tough dwarf, but he doesn't really do anything fucking tough.
No, and no, you're right.
He doesn't come across as tough. He just screams a lot.
You're supposed to be.
swings
He's
big
supposed to be like the
things.
big badass
Yeah.
one, the one where like you want to fight next to in battle. But you're right. He doesn't.
I don't
he just,
get that.
He just gets caught by trolls and.
The movie ended, and it ends with them standing on that great big plateau, looking off at the mountain, and Thorns just had the most contrived arc and of all time. And there's like the little full house hug everybody makes up and goes yay. And they reuse the score from the Return of the King, and I was like, really, this is it? This is 10 years in the making, and this is the movie they made? And then I'm looking at the movie after it's finished, and I'm like, we didn't get anywhere. They're still on the road trip.
They went from point A to point A.
Far to the east, over ranges and rivers, lies a single solitary peak. The dwarves are determined to reclaim their homeland.
And so much, like, we know the history of the Hobbit a bit because we followed it with like CGIing over actual like real practical effect works and such, you know, different villains, them changing it months before, and there's so much going, you can see it. Azog looks decent in some shots and looks like a video game in others. They were clearly picking and choosing because they were on a deadline.
What a lame villain. Like, he doesn't get anything done. He doesn't kill anyone. Except his own guys.
Yeah, he kills his own guys.
He just screams a lot and says, you know, bring me his head, but he never actually does anything. And like, I keep pointing out to you, does he even know what they're trying to do?
Yeah.
Is he trying to stop them from getting to the mountain, or is he just like out for bloodlust?
I think he's just out for bloodlust. I don't think he even cares about their journey.
I think in the second movie, it's kind of revealed that he does know. But again, in the first movie, we don't know that he knows. So his motivation is not clear to us.
It's really not. It doesn't have the same feel as Lord of the Rings, I know, because it's not Sean film, it's digital. And I'm all for digital, but it's so like, it's so set-like. It's like instead of going out into the woods or something, they're like, let's build a set with green screens and we'll just do it here. I don't know, you lose so much of like that lived-in feeling.
Absolutely.
Home is now behind you. The world is ahead.
Let's move on to the second movie, which I don't have here.
It's at my house.
This is your place. But that's The Desolation of Smaug. And this is...
Truly, the tales and songs fall utterly short of your enormity, O Smaug, the stupendous.
That, I remember, I think it was local newspapers, were like, Middle Earth has got its mojo back.
Yeah.
And I was
I
like,
remember
oh,
that.
good.
We were pumped. We were like, nice, because we were kind of down after the first one. Like, it was a pretty hollow movie, pretty cheesy. It had some decent parts, but for the most part, it was pretty disappointing. So this movie starts off with, where is it? What's the first? What does this thing start?
Prologue. Thorn and Gandalf.
Oh,
meet
of
in
course,
Bree.
yeah. I had a question about that scene too. So the scene, it's like the Bree we love from the original trilogy. It is. It looks way more like a set. I remember you telling me this, but even walking through the streets and stuff, it's like they're like, oh, we'll recreate it, but we won't do that big of a
I felt
job
like I
on
was
it.
watching like a low budget, like History Channel recreation of something.
Yeah.
Even though like the first Fellowship of the Ring, Bree was obviously a set, but I just had a totally
Like a
different
lived-in
visual
feel.
style and feel to it, and
Yeah.
it didn't. I was like, they're trying, but they're not doing it.
No.
That's the scene that is supposed to explain why Thorn is so gung ho
Yeah.
about getting back Erebor.
Yeah, he's being convinced by Gandalf essentially.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's his motivation. Gandalf said, "Take back your homeland."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Okay."
Yeah.
That's his
Like,
motivation.
maybe I should do that.
Maybe I should.
Maybe I'll do it.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah.
That's his motivation.
It's not like Aragorn's motivation of actually taking the throne of king or whatever, where it's like, I better do this or the world's gonna end.
Yeah.
You know?
Like, it's like...
Essentially. Yeah.
And I was like, really? It's such a pointless scene.
You have no right to enter that mountain.
I have the only right.
We've been blind. In our blindness, our enemy has returned.
There were certain moments where it felt like they were really trying to get back to like the Lord of the Rings way of doing things. But again, it's just these little moments, and then they contrast it with these really cheesy moments. Like, there's one where Gandalf essentially asks Bilbo like what he found in the cave, and he says like, "I found my courage," you know, and it's just like this nice little moment of conversation, like a character moment. You're like, this is nice.
That's also good for revealing the evil of the ring.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But then
Which we already know about.
we know about it, exactly. So again, it's almost like, I liked how the movie, at least in this one, it moves a little quicker. Like
The first hour does.
Yeah, it feels like they're on a little bit of a journey. I actually don't hate the first hour of that movie. It is a little silly with like the bear guy and stuff, and I don't even know why he is even in that movie. I'm not even kidding. Like, he must come back in the third movie and play a role, but he has very little to do.
You summed this up really well a couple of months ago. You said they're doing like the Marvel thing, which is set up characters that have no relevance to the movie that they're in.
Yeah.
Because they'll come back.
They'll come back later on.
Which is not, in my opinion, good storytelling.
No.
It's wasting time. It's inefficient.
When they meet the elves, though, the movie like completely goes downhill.
Yes.
Like, I'm not loving it up until that point, but really when it gets to that moment, it becomes, I actually think, like, laughable. I started laughing. Like,
it's right around the introduction of Legolas.
It really is. That character that was cool in the Lord of the Rings movies because he was a side character who didn't talk a lot and just did cool things action-wise. Yeah. And bought into the idea of Frodo being the person to destroy the ring.
His big action things in the first movie are he jumps up on the cave troll.
Yeah.
Fires an arrow like 100 yards and gets a headshot.
Yeah. And when he's on the troll, he safely jumps off of it while the troll's falling. He doesn't like backflip off of it or anything.
And then the third one is he fires like 6 arrows in a row and they all hit their mark. And you go, that's cool.
Yeah.
But then this one, it's like Cirque du Soleil.
And you could see, though, in the original trilogy, in the Two Towers, he did something a little crazier. He went down the stairs on the shield. In the third movie, he rode the Oliphant. And it was like, it was pushing it a little bit. But at the same time, you're like, this is probably the craziest thing this character has ever done in his like 1,500 years of existence or whatever, because he's an elf.
Nope.
No, like, that's nothing.
Compared to what we've seen now.
60 years ago, this guy was a god. That Toriel character is just, she's terrible. Like, I'm not like sexist or anything, but it was clearly like, we need a female action figure to sell.
You're
almost, right. You know, and they're like, we have to have that. We have to have like a cool female elf warrior.
No, you're absolutely
and
right.
that's what they came up with.
And she has like some of the worst. The dialogue was in the trailer, and I was like, oh, here we go again, because it was like, Legolas is like, this is not our fight. And Toriel goes, this is our fight.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to like see the reverse of Legolas being like, you're right.
I knew it.
I knew it.
Like, I didn't know before, but now I know.
Now that you put emphasis on
Thank you.
is,
yeah.
Now I get it.
I found something in the Goblin tunnels.
What did you find?
My courage.
Good. You'll need it.
And I remember that being a complaint with the first movie, too, is that Bilbo actually doesn't do anything in the whole first movie, basically. In the second one, he does everything, and the dwarves do nothing.
Yeah, like, like, my mouth was like this in the theater when that scene happens, when they're trying to find the door into Erebor.
Yeah.
As the sun is setting, right? And they're running out of time, and then they don't do it in time, and Thorin's like, I tried, I really tried, and everybody's like, oh, well, Oh, shucks.
Yeah, no one's like, oh, it is a riddle. Maybe we can try to solve it.
They give up in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And then Bilbo is the one who's like, no, we can figure this out.
And then right when he drops the key, then Thorin comes and steps on it before it falls off the cliff, like as if he came back. They came back. They didn't actually give up, but that scene's so weird.
That was
the weirdest scene in the movie.
That
for
was
sure.
so contrived. It was like, okay, we need Bilbo to do something really important.
And Bard the Bowman, before they cast for the Hobbit, when I first seen that actor, I can't think of his name. I remember thinking, this guy,
Luke Evans.
yeah, this guy belongs in Lord of the Rings. Like, so when they cast him, I was like, nice, and he does a really good job. I find, like, he's really good. But again, his character really doesn't have much to do. It's just like, oh, people who have read the books, wink, wink. This guy kills Smaug.
Well, they set up his arc to be that he's trying to fulfill. His arc is very similar to that of Aragorn's, which is that his ancestor kind of fucked up.
Yeah.
So now he feels that he has to make up for it.
Yeah.
So I kind of get that, but agreed.
But I like how, like, in the Lord of the Rings, Aragorn, when we first meet him, he doesn't feel like he has to make up
No,
for
you're right.
it. He doesn't want to, and it's his journey and him finally realizing that's what he has to do that makes it interesting.
Yes.
Bard the Bowman, it's like, here's the backstory, care about this character.
Now.
And I'm like, but
We just met him.
yeah, I don't know if he's good or not. Like,
And he doesn't get an arc in that movie, does he? In Desolation of Smaug?
no, I really wouldn't say so. Last we see him is he grabs the arrow thing that he has in his house.
No, you're right.
And his kids are like, oh my god. And he's like, I'm going to slay the dragon. Or whatever.
Let's talk about the Toriel healing Philly or
Such a
Killy.
callback, obviously, to Lord of the Rings.
It's supposed to be
Wait.
like when Arwen first appears. And she's all. This is the very first shot you see Arwen in the Fellowship of the Ring. She's all
Yeah.
glowy and she's wearing a white
Yeah.
dress, and she's speaking in Elvish. So you think like, is she like some supernatural being of some
Yeah.
sort? And then you realize, oh no, Frodo's kind of half dead, so he's kind of seeing her in a different form. Oh no, she's much more normal than that.
Yeah.
But in this one, it was so bad.
It really is. It feels like
Bakalaka, Sherpa, Flurpa, Flurpa, and then it starts getting like really bright.
really
and I was
bright.
Like, oh no.
He's like, oh my god, the beauty. And Smaug, you could tell they like had their best guys working on it or whatever because he does look really fucking
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
But that was like the best part of the movie because finally Bilbo is doing something. Like he's learning to become a sneaky burglar.
Yeah.
He's actually having an arc. Well, he did have an arc in the first movie, so I'm not giving enough credit. But it's very long. We don't know if he gets the Arkenstone or not. And then the dwarves that are like, we can't go in there because like the dragon's gonna fucking kill us. They go in there anyways. And then they do like this whole Benny Hill thing where they're all running around trying to be like, no, over here. And it's like you're building up.
Supposed to be really intelligent too.
Yes. Like dragons in folklore are supposed to be very smart, very, very smart. And they build up this dragon to be terrifying and smart, and all they have to do is just try to distract him and run around.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he's just like, oh, what?
What do I eat? What do I do? I know.
And it totally killed any tension. And then they somehow trap him in gold. And the liquid gold didn't look like they had time to finish rendering it properly because it looked very cartoonish.
Yeah.
And
And again, you contrast, and this is on the same movie, super cartoony, liquid gold, and then they ride down the gold in like metal buckets, right? Right, that happens?
yeah, he liquid gold. Gold doesn't melt until like 1200 degrees Fahrenheit. And then Thorn hops into a river of molten gold in a metal wheelbarrow.
Yeah.
Metal is a conductor.
Yeah.
He would be like,
Come now. Don't be shy. Step into the light.
I should bring up, again, Martin Freeman is not getting enough screen time in these movies. At all.
He got more in this one, at least he had stuff to do. And he's like, every scene with him is great. You know, it's like in Lord of the Rings, there was a Frodo scenes for the most part were great, and then it would go to like the Legolas and Aragorn stuff, and then like to Merry Pippin, everything was great. But in this, it's like only the the Bilbo scenes are actually like enjoyable.
One day I'll remember. Remember everything that happened. The good, the bad. Those who survived, and those that did not.
This movie, the three movies were originally written as two movies. And it was supposed to end with, like, the first movie was supposed to end after the barrel sequence. And then they see the silhouette of Bard, and they're like, what's that? And then it's a cliffhanger ending.
Yeah.
And then the second movie was going to take off there and finish with Bilbo getting home.
And the Battle of Five Armies would have been within that second movie somewhere, right?
But now they've been stretching it out far too long, and now there's nothing to happen in the third movie. And then this trailer came out, and I was like, oh, I was right. There's nothing going to happen in this movie. There was no plot details.
No, and this is what we have talked about, because we've talked about this a bunch throughout these movies, and it'd be the exact same in the third one, I'm sure. There's no stakes. Like, we know Bilbo's not going to die. We know Gandalf's not going to die. But, like, there's no stakes. You never feel like anyone's in legit danger.
Well, the way it happened in the book was that Bard kills Smaug.
Yeah.
And then after that happens, then Erebor is up for grabs.
Yeah.
So either the elves could take it, the dwarves could take it, or the orcs could take it. That's what's up for stakes. The kingdom of Erebor is up for stakes. But they don't explain that in the trailer. All that's explained is that Bard goes, will you have peace or war? And Thorin goes, I will have war.
Yeah.
I will have war.
And I was like, really? That's how their politics are in Middle Earth? Just peace or war? There's no
There's no, like, in-between gray area or something.
There's no in-between whatsoever, just peace or war.
Could we, like, negotiate? No.
No.
It's either peace or war.
Pippin's song singing over the whole thing. I was like, they're just like...
You have a callback to Lord of the Rings in the trailer.
beating the Lord of the Rings trilogy to death. And then there was that video game sequence.
And throughout the trilogy, too, we're like technical stuff. There's so many of these, like, video game camera movements and video game CGI where it's like the action literally, like, becomes something you don't even pay attention during, I want to say.
Will you follow me? One last time.
Now, if you had to pick one between An Unexpected Journey and Desolation of Smaug, you had to watch one right now.
Probably the first one,
Yeah. Why?
because I watched the other one last night.